Welcome to the Immigration Therapist Podcast, a podcast for therapists and immigration lawyers. On today's episode, I want to talk about immigration evaluations. And this is not a question for immigration attorneys. This is a question for therapists, actually. So, of course, immigration attorneys, know what these are. But a lot of therapists don't know what immigration evaluations are. So here's my experience of what immigration evaluations are. Some immigration cases require and can benefit from evaluations, psychological evaluations. Since I'm a master's level, I call them psychosocial evaluations. So some cases, like I said, they benefit from evaluations. And this is for two reasons from my experience. One is to give the attorney more insight into the case so they can understand their client more, they can understand the case more, they can hopefully gather more information about the case from the evaluation, from the client's reporting, for my assessment, for my diagnosis. And the other purpose is for immigration to understand the emotional, psychological state of the client. But here's where it gets complex. There are several types of immigration evaluations. In some cases, you'll be assessing the immigrant. And in attorney language, they're called the applicant, right? They're the ones applying for a case. But in our case, they're called clients, right? So the client is someone who we're assessing for an immigration case. And it might be, like I was saying, sometimes our client might be the one applying for the immigration, for a change of status, for, they're going through an immigration process. Sometimes we'll be interviewing not the immigrant, we'll be assessing the citizen or the resident in the country. So that just goes to show the complexity of these evaluations. Sometimes we'll assess the children of the immigrant, which is, the attorney's client, which is they're called applicants, right? Sometimes we will be interviewing, what I call secondary sources of information, like we learn in school. We'll be interviewing family members in order to gather more information about the client. So immigration evaluations are very complex because there are so many different types. And what determines what type of evaluation, what type of assessment you'll be doing is the immigration case the person is doing. So this is why it's very, very important for the therapist who conducts immigration evaluations to be somewhat familiar with immigration cases. Obviously, we're not expected to be immigration attorneys, obviously, but we need to have an basic understanding what cases are. So, like I mentioned, sometimes you'll be assessing the client, the immigrant. Sometimes you'll be assessing the citizen. Sometimes you'll be assessing the children. Sometimes you'll be assessing everybody in the family, actually. So it all depends. So it's very important that we know what the purpose of the immigration evaluation, what it's for, and who our client is. So it's very complex, but doable, super doable. So I don't mean to make it sound like it's impossible, because it's not. But it requires understanding. It requires having basic knowledge of immigration cases. And by basic knowledge, I mean just, like a simple Google research. You can just go online and, for example, if a client comes in saying, hey, I need an assessment, a psychological assessment for my VAWA case. And you might be like, what the heck is a VAWA? Like, what? Was that a word? So what you do is, you have to be aware of what VAWA is, VAWA cases. What are what is this? You know, for many reasons, because one, you don't want to waste precious time, finding out what the evaluation is about. So you're there with the client. You don't want to be wasting time in session trying to find out what the evaluation is about, what they need and what they're there for. And second, because of the client, because it's all client centered, right? We definitely don't want to make clients feel like we're being sensitive to their cases, like we don't know what we're doing, because, as I mentioned in the previous episode, these are people that are going through difficult cases in the country. They're going through difficult situations. They're, sometimes at risk of deportation. So they need to feel that they're in good hands. So immigration evaluations are about, in a nutshell, they're about an immigrant who is applying. They have a case with immigration, and their attorney is requesting a psychological evaluation, either of them, the immigrant, or their citizen or resident relative. So in a nutshell, that's what immigration evaluations are. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to check us out on our social media platform. Our site is centerforimmigrationevaluations.com, and I promise I'll get this one day. I don't know this by heart, even though I've had this account for years. But our Instagram account is immigration_evaluations_center. Or you can just research Immigration Evaluation Center on Instagram. I'll see you next week.